utilitarian buildings, but not exclusively on secondary structures such as this. So the material is appropriate for a secondary structure. Retaining walls, bridges, and stairs. It's unclear if there'll be any new retaining walls associated with the garage construction in order to hold up the grades at the sides of the building. If so, any new retaining wall areas connected with the garage should feature the same stone veneer or be constructed out of materials that can be staff approved. Exposed concrete walls from the street, visible from the street, are not allowed. And then lighting. Information on any lighting installed in the garage has not yet been provided. The information can be submitted either before or with the building plans for permitting. Fixtures should be downcast or have cut-off shields in order to not visually interfere with vehicles on Davin or shine into other properties. A lot of times, we're not only looking at the lighting, so that it's compatible, it doesn't overtake the building or conflict with the nature of the area, but also just to make sure that it's not a couple of big flood lamps put on the front of the building that are shining into the neighbor's property. Staff notes that paving the driveway area in front of the new garage will be required, and this should be either asphalt, concrete colored, or the city's approved mix for the historic district. So staff believes the proposal is consistent with the purpose of the historic preservation regulations by encouraging private ownership and use of properties within the district, and recommends approval of MCAC 2002 for the construction of a new two-car garage with second floor workshop at 201 Spencer Avenue with the conditions as, number one, if not provided to the commission for the public hearing, additional information on the window and door materials and specifications on the divided lights shown in the windows and on any lighting fixtures shall be provided prior for staff review and prior to issuance, shall be provided for staff review and approval prior to issuance of the building permit. 2, new retaining walls shall be clad in the same stone veneer as the lowest level of the garage, or if another material is proposed, this will be provided for planning staff review and approval prior to issuance of the building permit. 3, if concrete is used to connect the garage to the street, it shall be colored per the city's adopted formula. Alternatively, pavers or asphalt shall be utilized. Answer any questions that I can.
So the less excavation.
That's the idea, putting it closer to Davin, and Davin is
trees.
Right, all the stuff that they're concerned about.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right, applicants Rachel Bowling from Lewis.
Throwing party board around. I'm sure you guys all know. Rachel Buller, 201 Spencer Avenue, Manitou Springs. So, you guys all know what hardy board is, right? We got a sample of the material.
With the wood grain.
Yeah. And to answer the question about the gable end, it is going to be the board and batten look. It'll be the same material.
So it just goes all the way up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what else?
Which color? Where did it go? Hold on, which color for the mansion?
We don't know yet. We ordered some samples, and they haven't arrived yet. They're taking their time getting them to us. But it's going to be the one. The thing is, if you look at our house, the stone on our house, you kind of go around our house. There's a lot of different colors from the years of aging and weather and all that stuff. So we're just going to pick the one that looks the closest to sort of that side of the house, I guess. Those are the two that look the most like what's on the house.
You could always look at mixing them too. If that, once you got the samples, you could always consider mixing them.
That's true.
To kind of give you some of that variation. Mm-hmm. They look close enough that it doesn't look like it would clash, Yeah. So that's an option. But I think, it's a good profile for the stone, and the two colors, I think,
pretty amazing match, don't you think?
Yeah. You're lucky.
I'm jealous. This is really going to be fun.
Okay.
What about any of the retaining walls? Do you guys know yet? If anything you need?
Yeah, so the only thing I wanted to say about the staff recommendation is it says new retaining walls shall be clad in the same stone veneer. You're talking about new retaining walls that would be visible, because our intention is, that the garage foundation that's going into the hill is gonna be the retaining wall.
Yeah.
So, because behind that it's sandstone, correct? Sandstone is what's been carved into, and we feel, we don't know for sure, but we're pretty sure that that's gonna be stable enough that we don't need to do anything else to hold that back. So we don't think there will be any new retaining walls other than, the foundation of the garage, which is gonna be clad in that stone.
But if for some reason one is required, you'll understand that we would want that covered. So,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, things that are subsurface, no.
Yeah.
Or on the back of the building.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, I mean, if it's back there and then we're putting the garage in
Yeah,
front of
yeah.
it, then,
It's
that
not
would be
visible.
silly.
Yeah.
We're all about aesthetics.
That's why I said visible, like visible retaining walls.
Okay.
And it looks like the only other thing is the material for the windows and doors, and whether you're gonna have the divided lights.
Yes, so we're gonna have divided lights. They won't be the kind that is the fakey thing in the middle of the glass. It'll be, it won't be a true divided light, because I don't even know where you'd find those anymore. But, it will be, that the grill will be on the outside, popped out,
Right.
so it'll look like a real true divided light.
Yeah.
That's great.
When you hope to start?
As soon as we get everything approved, which will take a little while still, we have to do planning commission stuff still.
And the material for the windows and doors?
Well, it'll be something that looks like wood, it won't look like vinyl.
Right.
And if you buy like an Anderson Architectural, they have, I believe the outside material is fiberglass, or some kind of mix of fiberglass. You won't know that it's fiberglass though, it'll look like wood, it'll be painted. So, you won't be able to tell. It won't be white vinyl.
Will be like-
Thank you.
I promise.
Any more questions for you?
It's quite a drive up there. Oh, yeah. It's quite a drive up here.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're fine with the driveway thing too. The drive up, out of the driveway, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what we'll do, probably it's not that big of an apron, so. It won't be anything too fancy. Probably paid.
It will look good.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Unless we get really crazy, neighbors in or something.
Well, it is a small area.
Yeah.
No further questions, then we'll go to public comment. Anybody here for public comment on their application? In that case, further discussion.
Everything's good.
Clean. Very good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
No.
No. Sure, you will, right?
Well, I'll make a recommendation. I'm making a motion to approve NCAC 2002 for the construction of a new two-car garage with second floor workshop, 201 Spencer Avenue, with conditions. Do we need to do the conditions for the?
You could say, noting the discussion regarding the window and door materials, that
Okay.
the windows will have external, divided light grids. They don't plan any new retaining walls, that would be visible from the street, and, agree to, use concrete, asphalt, pavers, whatever, pave the driveway.
So per our discussion about the windows and the lighting fixtures, and that can be provided, you've already provided it to us. And then new retaining walls, if you have to use them, will follow the material that's planned for the approval of the building permit. And if concrete is used, it has to be colored pink. Right. No, excuse me, it has to be colored to Manatee's requirements.
That's it.
I second it.
Did you?
I can.
Yeah,
That's the easy part.
yeah. Go ahead and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Did you get my email about the, okay. Do you need anything else?
Okay, thanks. The fun one.
She looks like she's gonna enjoy this.
Alright, next item, MCAC 2003, material change of appearance certification for 515 Ruxton Avenue.
So this is, for a request about some renovations and new construction that are going on up at the, Cog Railway. The Cog Railway is located in the Ruxton subdistrict, and you have information regarding that. Basically, there's some main elements to the proposal, which I've broken down. I kind of did in 4 sections. There are 5 elements, but I grouped a couple of them together. So, additions onto the existing train sheds, new loading platforms, and reinstallation of the existing passenger pavilion. A pedestrian bridge from Ruxton Avenue that starts from Ruxton Avenue, not over Ruxton Avenue, and goes over into the south of the train tracks. An elevator addition to the depot and a new restroom building, an entirely new building. So staff has basically gone through each of those elements and provided some evaluation. So I'll just continue doing that for this. The depot was built in 1890 by the Gillis brothers. It's got elements of Queen Anne design. It is a significant structure here in Manitou Springs. It's National Register eligible. I did include the survey and inventory forms, not only for the depot, but we have another form for the, well, it's the office building. It used to be Dinky Trolley Station. And then you'll note that there are some related structures and buildings on the site that are noted on those forms, like the train sheds, the stone retaining wall. There was at one point a historic spring on the property. I don't really know that that's even there anymore or evident. I did include the Secretary of the Interior standards because of the important and iconic nature of the property. And our guidelines are based on those, so application of the guidelines, follow the Secretary of Standards for rehabilitation. So in regard to the train shed additions, one non-historic train shed was removed in 2019 to facilitate replacement of the train tracks. Additions to existing train sheds F and G are shown on the site plan. The different buildings are labeled, lettered, and to help you kind of navigate the site plan a little bit. So you'll see those cross-hatched elements. One is way down on the lower left corner of the site plan. You see it's a much smaller little train shed extension off the back, basically. And then the main one is off of train shed G that comes out farther and almost to the end of train shed E, or maintenance building E. Sheet A1.00 shows the addition to the eastern end of train shed G, which is the largest of the two and visible to Ruxton Avenue, given the location on the property. The exterior materials are shown as corrugated metal, both for roof and siding, with wood fascia at the roof edges, and commercial roll-up overhead doors for access by the trains. Those materials and the specified red color for roof and walls match the materials historically used for these outbuildings, which are an important part of the historic interpretation of the rail yard site. The following is the applicable guidance from Chapter 8, Secondary Structures. 9.1, it states when a secondary structure is historically significant, it should be preserved. This includes maintaining the structure in its present condition, rehabilitating it or adapting it to a new use so that the building continues to serve a function. So although secondary structures are more typically found on residential sites, as noted above, the train sheds are an important element to this property and its long-standing use. Staff finds the proposal for additions to sheds F and G conforms to the guidelines for secondary structures. One item that I skipped over that I do want to highlight as we start going through these is that because of the nature of the design of the buildings, their scale, their materials, and in fact just their overall design, they really have more of a features and character of what you would expect in a residential structure. They're not commercial structures that our design guidelines anticipate, like the storefronts in the downtown. And put on a, take the COG sign off, you could walk up to the depot building and think it's a house. I mean, if you look, it's got porches, the siding, the roof structure, and all of that. So although there may be some elements that might be a little larger than what a normal or regular Upper Ruxton house might have, although there are some pretty large ones in some areas. Staff has used the residential guidelines because that's what is compatible with this architecture, materials, scale, mass, all of that. So I did want to just note that, and we do anticipate that. We do have it in the guidelines that when we're directing people to review the guidelines, review it based on the type of architecture, not necessarily on the use. So, because they don't always match up, as we found. So in regard to the pedestrian bridge addition to the depot, the loading platforms, and the reinstalled passenger pavilion, the pedestrian access bridge will start at the level of Ruxton Avenue and then extend out over the train tracks to the new loading platforms and reinstall passenger pavilion on the south side of the tracks. The structures are shown on the overall site plan and on page A101, which shows a site plan focused on the immediate depot area, and the elevations associated with the access bridge are shown on page A4 of the plans. So you can see kind of that profile of the access bridge and it going over the tracks. The ground level loading platforms are basically wooden decks with no railings. Pretty simple. The existing covered passenger platform will be reinstalled on the south side of the tracks to provide for shelter for passengers waiting to board. Like the train sheds, the loading platforms and the passenger pavilion are secondary structures and serve to support the function of the property. The new platforms are extensions of the existing platforms already part of the improvements around the depot, or at least that were part of the improvements around the depot. The passenger pavilion was previously approved. The pedestrian bridge and stairs are in addition to the depot, and passengers will access the bridge through a small covered extension at the west end of the depot that currently exists, and continue south on the steel structure with an uncovered wooden walkway and railings matching the existing depot porches. Modification of the existing structure consists of removal of a solid wall on the west side and replacement with porch railings to match the rest of the depot. So that little extension bump out right now, if you look at the photos, you'll see that it's infilled with a solid wall on that west side where they've got some things posted. So you can walk underneath there, look at what's on the wall. I think they may even have a little shallow bench or something. And so that'll be removed, and that little extension will be opened up with a porch railing, and then you'll just continue on to the walkway that goes across the tracks and the stairs that access, I think, both sides of the tracks. So the following guidelines in Chapter 4, Preservation, Alterations, and Additions to Contributing Structures apply to the proposal. In regard to architectural character, the pedestrian walkway will not be readily evident from Ruxton, as it uses the small existing covered area on the west end of the structure as its entrance. The addition of porch railings will open this covered area to the view of the west, and this railing addition and the railings on the bridge and stairs maintain the original character of the depot and its architecture. In regard to alignment, utilizing the existing extension on the west end of the building maintains the historic alignment and incorporates the pedestrian bridge without changing the existing building significantly from the street. Orientation, the building orientation is unchanged by the addition of the pedestrian bridge. The building height, there's no change in building height at the street. The pedestrian bridge and the stairs are by their nature subordinate height to the depot. The access using the covered extension at the western end of the building transitions from the lower existing roof line of that area to the uncovered walkway, bridge, and stairs. And in fact, if you look at the depot overall, there are kind of these, I don't necessarily want to call them cascading, but that's kind of they step down. The roof lines tend to step down at those corners, which is a nice transition. Mass and scale, the architect's been able to incorporate the bridge access into the depot without adding additional building area at the street. This makes the directional emphasis of the depot's front facade and its human scale. Right now it has somewhat of a multi-directional emphasis, with the central part being a little bit taller, and then, like we were saying, those roof lines stepping down. You've got, kind of that more horizontal and the vertical, and not having to continue that vertical expansion out helps kind of maintain that balance of directional emphasis. Porches. The proposal provides for the preservation of the small west side porch projection and maintains its shape of proportion and orientation. The existing area is to be opened up by the removal of the solid western wall and installation of railings. That change visually ties the area to other porches on the building. Porch material, the new railing associated with the bridge and stairs will replicate the existing depot balustrades. Architectural details. Railings are the primary element of the pedestrian bridge and utilize the same design as the existing porches will reinforce the architectural character of the depot. The design also shows decorative brackets that are taken from the existing property improvements. And the steel posts have some molding and bracketing and kind of a treatment down at the foot that suits the character. And the use of steel, frankly, for something like a pedestrian bridge and a rail yard, having a little bit more of that industrial edge of the time even, I think was a good choice. The bridge is, as I noted, will be constructed of steel, and those bases and columns and molding details and arch brackets, as I said, was a good choice. The proposed pedestrian bridge and stairs, new loading platforms, and reinstalled passenger pavilion are consistent with the applicable design guidelines. The elevator addition to the depot. The second addition proposed is a new elevator structure on the eastern side of the existing depot between it and the existing cafe building. The square elevator tower is visible from Ruxton Avenue as it rises above the existing single-story structure in this area to just under the height of the depot's ridge line. The square tower features shingle siding, a double-hip roof with pitch and fascia details to match the depot. The tower is partially behind the depot's existing east side porch when viewed from the street. So elevations illustrating the elevator tower are shown on pages A3 and 4. Sheets A5 and 6 show the floor plans incorporating the elevator. So it's tucked in what is kind of a little nook there, which is a really great siding and capitalized on some features currently existing in the property that I think help to mitigate not only the height of the elevator tower from the street, because it didn't have to be perched up at Ruxton Avenue level. It's down basically on the floor. And so that helped reduce the perception of height. So in regard to the Chapter 4 guidelines that pertain to this proposal, the architectural character, the proposed design of the elevator tower incorporates architectural features of the original construction, and it's sited such that is the most minimal impact of the historic structures it's adjacent to. Building alignment, the elevator is being placed where it will not have any impact on the alignments of surrounding historic buildings. Nothing along Ruxton's changed. It's sited slightly behind and slightly east of that eastern porch. Orientation, the location of the elevator addition preserves the orientation of the depot building, and much like the pedestrian bridge on the west side, takes advantage of the existing porch on the east side to not only partially screen it, but also serves some access points. Height, building height. The elevation drawings show the proposed elevator is taller than the porch and cafe structures, but under the height of the depot itself. The bottom several feet of the addition are not visible to the street, as it's sited in back of the buildings aligned along Ruston Avenue, that helps to render the elevator tower as subordinate to the depot. The siting integrates the elevator into the surrounding construction and reduces the perception of height from the street. Mass and scale. The elevator addition is tall and narrow. The depot features multi-directional emphasis, as I mentioned before. Siting of the elevator provides vertical emphasis that balances the horizontal emphasis of the buildings east of the depot. Keeping the footprint of the elevator as minimal as possible also helps to integrate its mass into the existing buildings and the perception of scale. On the passenger side, the architect specified false windows to add a consistent design element and break up what could be a tall, solid wall mass. So actually keeping it on a small footprint as possible, siting it at least partially behind the existing porch and in that nook. And even though it rises above those one-story structures, it does interrupt the cascading effect because it's not a huge structure itself. I don't think it has some visual separation when it gets up into the air. It's not connected over to the depot visually. I think that there's a lot going for it as far as that mitigate what could have been done. You could have ended up with something that was much more clunky and large. Roof form. The double-hipped roof caps the elevator addition in a form similar to other roof lines on the depot and surrounding buildings. The roof pitch appears to be slightly steeper than the depot. Matching the depot's pitch could further integrate the addition and lower the height by a small amount. It's certainly not disconcerting. Sometimes when you don't necessarily have those identical matches, it can look really awkward. That's not the case with this. But it could if it does look like it's just slightly steeper than the depot. So that could lower the height just a little bit, but it's not something that staff would be adamant about. Let's just put it that way. Roof materials. The elevator roof will be clad in the same architectural style composition roofing as found on the depot. Porches. Again, the location of the elevator is behind and slightly east of the existing porch on that side of the depot, and that porch will be maintained and used for access. Retaining the porch not only maintains the existing historic structure, but allows for the elevator to be better integrated with the surrounding buildings, and they help to actually camouflage it. Materials, there's no changes in the materials of the existing east side porch. Windows, no changes to existing historic windows in the depot are proposed. I'm referring more overall in regard to that, with the exception of one window on the lowest level of the building not visible from Ruxton Avenue. As noted above, a couple of false windows are shown on the elevator tower from the passenger side to maintain a pattern consistent with the depot and break up the wall mass. Architectural details, the fascia around the lower roof edges matches the design of the depot. A decorative finial weather vane is shown at the top of the roof, and lower corner caps match this detail on the main structure. At the corner of the roof where it looks like it kicks up a little bit, there's a cap that pretty much creates that little swoosh, and that's a technical term.
I like that.
Materials. The material cladding the structures proposed to be wooden shingles to match the depot. A manufactured stone to match that of the depot is also proposed at the base of the addition, which will not be visible from Ruxton Avenue. Actually, that was in the written description, but the drawings, I couldn't see where there was stone at the bottom of the tower. Either way, that's from the passenger side, which is nice to have that information, but technically we're really only looking on the street side. So staff finds the proposed elevator addition is consistent with the applicable design guidelines. The new restroom building. So the new restroom building is sited at the eastern end of the site in an area that was formerly parking. And I think that was the area that where the passenger pavilion may have been previously. I think it was at the end as opposed to over on the side. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I remember. The new building is significantly visible from the street and continues the COG complex on the property. In addition to the main site plan, the applicable drawings of the restroom building are located on sheets A101, A1, A2, and A3. The restroom is a single level when viewed from the north on Ruxton Avenue. However, is sited above retaining walls and stone-clad foundation walls that respond to the significant grade on the site, which falls away to the south from the street. Materials and details that conform to the historic depot building will be utilized. Manufactured stone is proposed in a profile and color to replicate the original stone on the depot that is indicated. The street sides of the building will feature central dormers with I lost my place. The street sides of the building will feature central dormers with wall extensions, and the south-facing dormer will feature small divided light windows also found on the east-facing and southern elevations. The restroom will feature a larger covered waiting and entry area, which opens to the west toward the train tracks. The narrative indicates passengers will enter from that west side and exit on the north and south corners to create better pedestrian flow in the area. The restrooms will connect with the stairway down to the south platform, and on the north will connect to Ruxton and the depot on the north. Decorative iron railing is shown on the stairs and walkways around the restroom along the street. The Chapter 5 guidelines on new construction as apply are as follows. Building alignment. Although the restrooms are a significant building themselves, they are accessory to the depot and will be accessed internally from the site. Alignment at the eastern end of the property and at the end of the train tracks is appropriate and serves to enclose the operations on the site. Citing the restroom closer to Ruxton Avenue would have increased the building prominence, which would not be appropriate or desirable. We wouldn't want necessarily what's now the front, basically, where you have the opening and kind of that deep, for lack of a better porch element. We wouldn't want that necessarily aligned right up on Ruxton, facing Ruxton, because that would make it a much more prominent building. So I think the orientation or the alignment is appropriate, as is the orientation. The restroom entrance is appropriately oriented toward the train operations. Siding with the building, as I just noted, with the entry to the street, wouldn't serve those operations and would add emphasis to the building that would detract from the depot. Building height, the restroom is a single level aligned with the grade of the patio, helping it retain the historic building's primacy. Mass and scale, the restrooms are wider than the other structures at the eastern end of the depot. However, its site is more centrally on the property than the depot, which is sited right at the road, and similar in width to the depot, with the porches included, not just the depot main structure, but the porches that surround it as well. The lower height and siding help to ensure the new building doesn't overwhelm the historic construction or the site overall. The use of varied roof lines and building planes also add interest to the restroom building and visually cuts the mass of the structure. Building materials. Again, the building materials are wooden shingles and trim and manufactured stone. The intent is to match the existing original materials. Window materials are not noted. Roof form. Roof forms are consistent with that found on the existing buildings. Hipped roofs and dormers. Roof materials. The material would be the same composition shingle found on the other buildings on the site. Porches. The restroom building does feature a porch element. However, that faces the train operations, not the street, and is appropriate in the context of the overall site. Architectural details. So that's important to add visual interest and to have these visual ties when you have complexes of buildings or you're trying to coordinate with a historic building. So detailing matches the existing buildings and the area of more ornamentation, which is the porch. It has some brackets and some things, is not visible to the street. It is not seen to the public. And then we have the Chapter 10 site improvements for residential and commercial properties. So stone retaining walls, bridges, and stairs. The existing depot features steep, centrally located entry stairs down to the passenger platforms, although not ADA accessible and steep enough to be challenging even for some people without mobility issues. This is an important part of the history of the site, and staff was happy to see that maintained. I was concerned that something may want to be filled in there, so I was glad to see that didn't happen. And that basically that access serves almost like the building itself is like a retaining wall along the edge of Ruxton that stairs down into the property, much like just having a retaining wall and stairs without the building on top of them would do. There are also other stone walls on the building that appear to be retained, and that's a great thing. Those are mainly, well, I think almost exclusively visible to the passenger side of the property, although there are some short walls on the Ruxton side toward the eastern end. In areas of steep topography, incorporate traditional entry features such as retaining walls, bridges, and stairs into the site plan. Although the pedestrian bridge is not a traditional bridge location in the historic district, it does function to create better access to the site, which has significant grade to overcome from Ruxton to where passengers are loaded. Providing access and dealing with grade are the basic reasons traditional bridges are found in the historic district, and that functions. It's not going over a creek, it's going over train tracks, but it's to transfer somebody from one side to another and traverse topography. It appears there may be a series of retaining walls and ramps for ADA access between the end of the cafe building and the new restroom. See site plan on sheet A1. That aren't shown in any other drawings or described in the application. How this element relates to Restroom Avenue needs to be provided at the meeting. I think we can probably pretty simply just kind of go over that, explain what that feature is, and confirm that that's what is planned in that area. New retaining walls, bridges, and stairs shall match the appearance and alignment of the existing and or adjacent walls, as well as the character, quality, and appearance of other retaining walls, bridges, and stairs in the historic district. So the areas of new retaining wall associated with the proposal are to be clad in stone veneer that replicates the original materials. That veneer hasn't been specified and will need to be provided and approved prior to issuance of building permits. I don't know if the applicants might have some information on that tonight. If not, then it's something that as long as the commission is comfortable, I can certainly review and approve. Automobile access and parking. Those guidelines 10.4 and 10.5 are provided for the applicant/owner's information as parking on this property and across Ruxton Avenue on the main COG parking lot may be improved and upgraded. Screening and softening of the appearance of parking by the addition of appropriate walls and fencing and incorporation of vegetation is desirable. But that's not actually what's before you all tonight, so I just wanted to mention that. Lighting. No information on building lighting on the new construction or any site lighting has been provided. Design of fixtures to be placed on any of the buildings or within the site need to be provided for approval prior to the issuance of building permits. Fixture design should be compatible with the architectural style of the COG development. Lights must be shielded and downcast and meet the city's light level standards, and that will be reviewed in the development plan for the property. So it's something that we'll get information on regardless of at this meeting and at this level of discussion. Integral color, roofing, natural stone, grout, and concrete. The applicant indicates that the red composition roofing shingles are proposed throughout, except on the trenchets, which is the corrugated metal, as currently exists on the depot and adjacent buildings. Colors for the stone veneer and grout to be used in both the existing stone repairs and areas of new stone veneer must be provided for approval prior to permitting. Staff encourages the contractor to have testing performed for original color and composition of historic mortar for the original stonework repairs. That's can be very important if the mortar is too hard of a mix, it can actually ruin your stonework. So that is something that I think would be good, and the city's done that as well on some of its stone projects. No areas of walkways other than the loading platform are indicated on the application, except the ramps, the ADA ramps that I mentioned before. I don't know what the material is. Staff notes that any concrete visible from Buxton Avenue utilized on the site needs to be colored per the city's approved mix. So recommendations, staff appreciates the care taken to integrate the needed upgrades to the COG site while retaining the historic integrity of the depot and the adjacent existing buildings. As important as function is to the train operations, providing an authentic experience that honors the history of the train and Manitou Springs itself is also vital to both the visitor experience and to residents of the city. Staff noted in the above report one element that was not reviewed in the application involving ADA access ramps from Ruxton. Staff feels more information on that feature will help everyone better understand the overall project, and specifically in regard to what will be visible to Ruxton Avenue. Assuming that information is satisfactory, staff recommends the Commission approve MCAC 2003 for rehabilitation of the existing buildings and additions onto existing train sheds, the new loading platforms, the reinstallation of the existing passenger pavilion, a pedestrian bridge and stairs from Ruxton Avenue over into the south of the train tracks, an elevator addition to the depot building, and a new restroom building, as shown on the application information provided with this report at 515 Ruxton Avenue, with the following conditions. 1. Prior to the issuance of permits for rehabilitation or construction, the applicant shall provide information regarding A, lighting fixture design and specifications for all building and site lighting, B, the color and profile of all stone veneer to be used on the project, C, the color of all, that should say grout, not group, to be used for the new stone veneer, D, the color and mixture for all new grout, again, to be used, it's like sitting on text, to be used on the repointing of historic stonework. E, a detailed window schedule providing materials for all new windows, including any replacements of non-historic windows, which were mentioned in the application, that there are some windows that were already replaced that they're looking to replace again. Any new windows with divided lights shall have grids applied to the exterior surface of the window glass. 2, any concrete for walkways visible from Ruxton Avenue utilized on or adjacent to the site shall be colored per the city's approved mix for the historic district. No areas of new unfaced concrete walls shall be visible from Ruxton. 3, any parking areas that may be required to be paved or the applicant chooses to pave shall be surfaced in asphalt, colored concrete, or concrete pavers as may be approved by planning staff. Staff further recommends the Commission find the proposed changes are consistent with the design guidelines and purposes of the historic preservation regulations, items 1 through 4 as listed. Able to answer questions.
Do you need a nap after that?
I needed a nap before I started.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Michelle, could you describe what your false window looks like?
Well, there's different ways to do it. Sometimes you install an actual window and just paint it black and, have solid behind it. Sometimes it's done more with molding.
Okay.
And you generally, most of the time, paint what are supposed to be the window panes a dark color, so it just looks like, there's not a light on inside the building.
Okay.
But certainly I think that our architect can probably explain how they intend to do it. But so it gives you the outline and it breaks up that solid wall, and unless you go up and really pay attention, you just kind of walk by and think, oh, it's a window.
There was windows that were mentioned that the information on them weren't supplied. It's going to be on, I think, the restroom.
Right. We
But
don't
they're
know
on
what
the
that
plans.
material is.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that any divided lights, because those do feature the smaller divided light windows, that those have the exterior grids. So we just want to get some more information on that.
Okay.
And then the wall that's being taken down, what's it made of? Is it stone?
That's a good question. Is there a,
I'm trying to think, because I went up, I've been up there a lot, but
yeah, I think the architect probably addressed that.
no more questions from Michelle, we'll have the applicant come up.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can state your name and your address.
My name is Chris Hurley. Address is 100 Anvil Circle, Forest, Colorado.
Any response to staff report?
Sure, yeah. That existing wall that we're looking to take a portion out of, that is a concrete wall, so no demolition of stonework there.
Okay, what about the windows on the restroom we were just talking
Yeah,
about?
the windows, Michelle's exactly right. That would be a molding detail with either painted or it would be a mirror type glass.
Well, that's on the elevator.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the windows on the restroom? It looks like on the plans there's 3 little guys.
Yeah, so those are wood windows with exterior grids on them.
Oh, something. Okay.
And the ADA issue, that's Michelle highlighted.
So the ADA issue. So right now the parking for the college structure is directly north of the existing depot buildings. There's a crosswalk that would take you from that parking lot to the existing college railway depot. And then from there, once you're inside the building, as Michelle pointed out on the staff report, there is an interior set of stairs that's non-compliant. So we're installing, that's the main reason that we're installing that elevators for ADA compliance.
And the pitch of the roof is more narrow, or?
So on the new restroom building, the pitch matches the existing depot building at 912. The elevator building is more of that time similar towers that they did back in the Victorian era. There's more of a steeper slope to that.
So like 10 or 12, 12, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Have you looked at what it would look like to match the depot?
Yeah, I thought it looked a little disproportional to match it. It was just too short for how the total height of the.
Okay, right.
So people will cross and then go into the elevator to avoid the steep stairs.
Yeah.
They're really fun, the steep stairs.
Yeah.
I've tripped on them.
Not when you have arthritis or not.
So
Unless
managed
you're
to
really-
go.
Yeah, so maybe you have to hang on to that rail. So they'll go to the elevator, knowing
Yeah.
not going on the train, will be using the elevator. Sort of within.
So as soon as you come from the north parking lot, you cross over the street over Restroom Avenue. Then there's if you're looking at sheet A6, it shows there's an existing restroom that we're inside the college building that we're removing and turning that into a breezeway. So that will give you
So
direct,
that was good.
yeah, so that will give you direct access to the elevator.
Great. There's a retaining wall that we were just talking, we were talking about retaining walls for the other applicant. But, there has not been stone veneer, specified. Do you know about that one? It was 10.3.
Yeah, so the stone that we're proposing to use is, it's a stone that's produced by Alvarado specifically for Monkey Springs to match a lot of the existing stonework.
So the greenstone, the manufactured greenstone that we
I
use?
believe that's correct, yeah.
May I speak to that? The mason that we're gonna use is Tom
Yes, sir.
Fleming, and he's done quite a bit of work. He did restoration project, and what we're proposing is, actually, we can provide a sample of what they used in the past, and then we can just get that same formula matched, if that's acceptable.
And that should be, it's a good match. And as long as you choose a profile that, because you can get it in different profiles. I've had it done in crazy random profile and the cut profile. And I think the depot's a more regular cut profile, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's more engaged.
Yeah. So you should be able to get that in whatever profile seems to match the best.
Sir, can I have you state your name and address so that we have it for record?
Okay, Jeremy Elliott, 1420 North El Paso, College Springs, Colorado, 80907.
Thank
see, oh, the, what looked to be ADA ramps, kind of between the,
Oh, sure. Yeah, you're looking at sheet A 101. So coming off from the east side of the page. So what we're proposing in this area is a courtyard. Those ADA ramps will probably be a little bit reconfigured depending on the final layout and the elevations. But yeah, basically a courtyard to the green area, and then whatever develops within that courtyard would be the same decking material as throughout.
okay. So you're thinking that you'd have the decking material kind of at the passenger level, so to speak, and then where these rise and go up to Ruxton, you know, you kind of do you know what I don't know if any of this will be visible, you know, whether like maybe the top level, you'll see caps or something,
yeah,
or is it?
Very faint.
Yeah. Yeah, there won't be much of it visible, and probably some sort of pavement.
Yeah,
maybe concrete or.
And right now, I believe the grade's actually going to go down a little bit as the trains are coming in to the station and incline, so that the whole platform will probably shift down a little bit. So it'll be less dramatic than shown right here.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, as long as it's not really visible to Ruxton, if the surface of the ramps, I mean that the very top one at least will be, I mean you'll see it because you're right there. It's at the Ruxton level. Then it would need to be, if it's concrete, it needs to be colored. If it's asphalt or some sort of pavers, then sure, that should be fine. What about lighting?
Lighting will be there's a little bit of write-up on that one. What we intend to do with the lighting is to not contribute to the night pollution and try and use a lot of the downward facing lights, and then a lot of the lights that would be more along the Victorian style of design.
You haven't selected those yet.
We haven't selected those yet.
That's not unusual.
The train sheds, do they come down the same way? They've been forever up there as you bring them down. Will they match? Are you trying to match the color of them?
Yeah, they are trying to coordinate all the colors to match everything. Joe, did you want to speak into that a little bit?
I think it's John Goodlow, 621 Columbia Court. The train sheds, yeah, that strong red color, we're just doing additions to those sheds, so they'll intend is that they will look just like the portion that we're adding on to, but that strong red color is what will match.
And the question on the maintenance of the building right now, I noticed, some of the paint is peeled off some of the windows. You might look into that before more weather hits them. And so you're planning to in your project you wrote, you're planning to repaint or repair, restore some of that stuff that's been weathering right now.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, trying to restore it to its original state. So that would involve a little bit of putty work where needed, if the windows kind of crack.
I'll miss those restrooms that are going to be the breeze zone. They're really exciting to use with kids. And little kids. Not fun.
I think somebody was saying last night there's like 8 total now, and you're going to go to 18 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, like 9 and 9. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Gary Pearson, Denver, Ancients Corporation, going to 9 and 9.
Okay.
So that's going to be a multiple of what we have now,
Yeah.
which is all part of the design to help human traffic flow.
It's active flow.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure every one of you guys get to do your name.
Well, I'm just going to get to sit here.
I really appreciate all of your work in this project. Of any landmark that we have, this one is so important to us, and I really want to at least extend my hand to you guys for all the extra hard work that went into all this.
Much relieved.
Towards that end, I'm Mark Nelson, 2524 Colorado Street, Colorado Springs. But I was quite struck with the in-depth analysis that Michelle has done. And really, it's kind of a sleuthing process, if you will, discovering the process that we went through, Michelle, in creating this, because it was a fairly complex program that we got from SOM, and to then take that and create something that fit into Manitou was our goal, and to keep it as simple as possible, both for the expense of it, but also because we knew that would be a more successful building in this sub-district, and in particular for this very important building. I noticed in the nomination from 1982 that it said that this building is basically the way it's always been. And what that means is it's a very resilient building. And that we're able to continue the use of that and just add to it with some other adjacent and ancillary buildings, much as you described, and features. And that was very definitely a intent. So thank you for doing that hard work.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks for making it easy, because,
Well,
you know, sometimes these are much more difficult.
Chris's analysis in the submittal, I think, was remarkable.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
You did a very good job of that.
No, it's a great project, and I think you all capitalized on some things and did some really clever, you know, retooling that worked in your favor, and not have to add a lot of other things or build a lot of new, you know, other new things that could have just been harder to do. That was great.
And you can still fall down the stairs.
Yeah, I can still. And you say that, and I probably will.
You've done a great job.
It's the mini
I love
one,
those stairs.
okay?
Yeah, that's the mini.
No, it's a fun thing.
Alright, other questions for the applicant? If there's any public comment, it doesn't appear that anybody else is here, so.
We're so popular.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Well, I want to compliment him too, because it's, you know, could have gone a different way, and it's going so
Oh, I know.
very much the same, and, you know, I've been in Manitou for 35 years now, and, you know, I've gone up there a lot. So it's going to be a really pleasant place to take people in when it's open. And it took a lot of work to do that, because you could have done some other things that wouldn't have been as respectful of the community. So appreciate that.
Adding the elevator shaft, I think is so tricky into some of these historic properties. And this was amazing.
And I can't wait to see the false windows.
You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, very impressive.
So I just want to finish.
Yeah, so do they. With those restrooms.
Okay, does anybody want to?
I might add one thing. Our original architect drafted this entire thing as contemporary. We decided not to bring that forward.
Thank you.
And that's our former architect.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have to admit, whenever somebody looks at me and says, "You're gonna love this," oh God, please. So I was glad that I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no, I'm so afraid to mutilate this beautiful
Just
project.
read the staff recommendation.
I
and
will.
it's
Okay,
amazing.
I recommend the approval of MCAC 2003 for Pikes Peak Cog Railway, and of course I'm going to splatter this, with the staff approval of the conditions from the color of the grout and the stone veneer, the windows, the lighting. I have complete confidence in you guys for that. And anything else? What else you guys want to say? The conditions of 1 through 3, of course, and the findings 1 through 4. Or you want me to read every one of them?
No, you're fine.
No,
Okay.
good. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Vote.
Great.
That is unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. And we're looking forward to the party.
This was easier than.
We're the snow trees over this project.
Thank you.
We think you will be very proud of this building.
I know we will.
And we're looking forward to it. We're very proud of this.
How many millions of people are gonna see this? Yeah, we're excited.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. You can stay for the rest of the meeting. It's more exciting.
And, thank you all for volunteering. Absolutely. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you, nice to see you too. I'm glad you were on this one. This building is Colorado Springs, I've been so on. You know? I'm not a fan of Colorado Springs right now. And what they're doing is this sort of building. Never have been. I know, I have remnants of the ice house sitting in my shower.
Alright, so, on to other business. We have Preservation Month and honor award.
So we've not gotten that work done yet. So Dylan and I are going to commit to getting it out to you next week. That way our packets and everything will be done this week and we can concentrate on that. With the idea that then in the April meeting, that'll give you all plenty of time to go out and look at stuff before the April meeting. And then you can bring your choices to the April meeting and we can get through it, get things chosen, and still have some time to make all the arrangements.
Item 8, discussion regarding code of conduct for boards, commissions, and committees.
This is something that came up at a recent council meeting and was originally drafted for the city council. Then the idea came up that it should incorporate city council and all the boards and commissions. I think that's not a bad idea, but I do think that there are some wording and some language differences that make it a little awkward. And one of the things that I especially noted was that one of the items, it's several items down, kind of map past the midpoint, communicate with staff through the city administrator. Well, that is something that they want council, that we think council needs to do. But with boards and commissions, we need to have direct communication with our board and commission members at a staff level. Those should not be going through the city administrator. And I think that it's hard to, in some of these state, what I think would be better, instead of having a one-size-fits-all, I think they ought to pass one for council, and then an identical one, but with the appropriate wording changes that relate to the boards and commissions, and pass that one. And so they're basically the same, but it's a little less clunky as far as trying to make it fit everybody.
Well, and I think there's a negative tone to it that could be improved with some of the detail of the words, that you state what you want as the code, but then you put in this negative piece, it makes you think that someone must be doing something, rather than, being respectful is respectful.
Right.
And I think that repetition and the redundancy of some of this, and then I'm like you, when you have a code of conduct, you want to have the talking about our vision, talking about the code, and then you go into the respectful actions. It's sort of like, it's like a group of people made this and have good ideas, but it needs to be.
Well, I think I think those are good comments, and actually, if you had suggestions, like.
I was going to rewrite, but then I thought I was maybe a little bit.
No, they're looking for that kind
to
of
rewrite,
feedback.
because I just felt like I didn't want to step on council's toes, and I think I think you're right in saying that we are a little bit different here, a little bit different in the TPE, a little bit different in the HAB.
Right.
So the basics could be the same, but then the detail of some of that, just like work for the common good, not personal interest. Well, working for the common good is become good if we don't need to put personal interest. I mean, it's sort of like different.
Yeah, I think this was specific to past actions that council had. I mean, it was, you can look at this and you can tell.
Can you tell?
Oh,
You go to all those
absolutely,
meetings.
yeah, I mean, what brought that up? And so, and those things aren't relevant to us, so I don't actually think, just like this, it is very relevant.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be significantly rewritten.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fine for council, they apparently spent hours on this in a retreat, and this is what they came up with. But the notion that it just wholesale applies to us,
Yeah.
or any other board, I think kind of misses the mark.
Well, yeah, it does.
And I think
Because like
that's
the
what you're doing.
transportation one is, I mean, we're a board, we're not even a commission, we're not quasi-judicial, and we barely communicate with each other on parking, I mean, just didn't,
Yeah, I think it
I
needs
didn't
some
see
more
that,
thought.
I didn't see us being, not getting along or not agreeing or not reaching compromise, we didn't do
Right.
that,
Yeah.
just because of who we are.
I mean, I think it's fine to have a code, and I think it's fine
Codes is
to
good.
say these are what we aspire to, and even if you're doing it currently, that's great, you know.
Right.
But I do think they're a little bit two different animals, like Ann said, council and boards and commissions.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what we'll do is communicate kind of those comments, but if you do have specific wording changes, whether it would be so it's more applicable to boards and commissions, or whether it's suggestions even for the council code, don't hesitate to, you know, forward those. You know, I mean, nobody's a professional writer, you know, as far as, you know.
So,
So,
and it seems like council really works hard, it really works for them, I think, and
right,
they feel good about it, so I don't want to say.
Yeah, no, and it fits them, it
Yeah.
just doesn't fit us, or probably most other boards.
right.
We get along too well here.
Yeah, well, we have different, completely different
Yeah.
issues, yeah, completely different.
Exactly.
So I think and I think, what, did they say that last night, or, they've gotten the same feedback, I think in,
Oh, somebody
Communication.
mentioned that something was
yeah,
brought up.
Nancy said that in Ostera, Rose
Yeah.
Factor, that they had a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
So, and I think she actually suggested that the council ought to adopt this and then deal with the boards later. So I
Gosh, you
think
know, I
that's
hadn't even
the,
heard that, so that was
yeah,
kind
well,
of
it was
better.
like 10
because I
o'clock
remember
last
seeing
night,
it,
yeah, at the end of that long meeting.
Oh, okay, that's
So,
when they went back in.
yeah, so I think that's the direction it's gonna go. And I agree, if you've got specific, I mean, the first few are good, but I think then it kind of
It's sort of like,
It
gets
goes
too
dark.
it's that
specific.
principle, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
it's
does.
too unique to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
intention is good.
Yeah, the intention is very good.
Yeah, no, I think we could certainly create, out of this basis, we could create a good one that would be applicable overall to boards.
I think so too, yeah, I agree.
Great.
And on to notice of council action.
So we did, and Ann was at the work session, the council work session, where we presented the recommended amendments to the historic district regulations. There was a lot more discussion than what I had really anticipated, it took a lot longer. And they did not set it for first reading yet. They wanted to have staff come back with some further revisions, but also some information about ways that we could kind of accomplish some of the looking at the resources, maybe while they, you know, if one is like in process and there needs to be a preservation consultant.
Yeah.
Because the concern is that, you know, if somebody's in the process and we just automatically refer everything to a consultant, not only is that going to be really expensive, but it's going to really add a lot of time to, I mean, it could take 2 or 3 months to get a report back on a single property.
If it's not currently designated.
Right,
the undesignated.
the undesignated, yeah, this is referred to the
That was the
undesignated.
whole issue, how you do the undesignated. And
Yeah.
the concern, one of the main concerns was they didn't think the way we had structured who pays, that because we had inventory everything in the historic district, that we ought to make the applicant pay. And I think that's kind of up to council, but what I had suggested to Michelle is we could restructure it to say that if the applicant comes in, I mean, I think the first thing we want to do is what you described, is sort of the reconnaissance survey, because I continue to believe that 90% of the properties are going to be clearly contributing or contributing. There's just going to be no doubt. And then the ones that are kind of up for discussion, I think will be a small percent.
Yeah.
But this kind of discussion was that I suggested is that we elaborate a little, that when an applicant comes in and it's undesignated, that, and we have the discussion with them about whether we think it's contributing or not contributing, or we're unsure. If we don't agree with the applicant, that we will jointly choose a historic preservation specialist, and they wouldn't have started the project, obviously. I mean, they would know that there's going to be a delay. And the city, if the council wants to pay for it, the city will pay for it.
Right.
And
Yeah, I
think
had proposed the way that we have it lined out now with the payment. I actually thought it was gonna go the other way, because normally, applicants have to reimburse the city for any expenses.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted it in there. There were times that we would pay for it, if we were referring it.
Right.
Because if you have if I have a planning commission item and I refer it without even consulting the applicant to a professional to review it,
Right.
they're paying for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to say, if
Right.
we're going to refer it, then it's going to be on our dime.
Right.
I expected
council
to say, yeah, no, we're not paying for everything.
yeah, but they were like, no,
We should pay for everything.
So
even if they want to.
I think
Oh, no.
I think that there are so few instances where this will actually be an issue that that's appropriate, that you bring them in, we can't both agree that it's one or the other, we agree on a specialist, we pay for it, and if they're not happy with the specialist outcome, then they hire their own and they pay for it.
I've been on this board about 8 years. I think we've had 2.
Oh, I mean, they are so rare.
We're
think
spending a lot of time, effort, and money on a very isolated
We
issue,
are.
and
we are.
there's a lot behind it,
There
but
is one, yeah.
it's an opportunity, I think, for people to have something to complain about.
Well, the proposal actually was that, that we either get everything inventoried or within 6 months,
6 months.
or everything gets described, everything that's undesignated becomes non-contributing. And it was like, what sense does that make? And I don't think council even thought that. And John Shaded, to his credit, kept asking, what's the advantage of having everything inventory necessarily? I mean, what is that benefit? And I agree, because we won't see but a very small percentage of those.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just fine to rewrite it to say they come in. If we can't agree, we jointly choose a historic preservation specialist, we pay for it, and off we go.
Yeah.
And I think we can't go much further than that, frankly.
We're gonna get so far off.
This is getting crazy, yeah. So I think that's what we ought to go back with.
Okay.
And I think the council, of course, doesn't deal with our issues very often. So there's like various levels of
We're good.
understanding.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. But I think they'll buy that. I think what they didn't want was to put the burden initially on the applicant. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
If they're fine with that, I'm fine with that.
Right.
Let us pay for it.
Right. Yeah.
So
And I
think
did
it's
say that I
fixable.
would find out some costs, because I
Right.
was estimating some of them.
Right.
And then I would also talk to try to get a read from some consultants that would tell us, well, if I got this request you know, or if we could do some sort of on-call thing where we select them, we have them on call and they guarantee to get us an evaluation in 30 days,
Yeah.
you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we're gonna look into that.
I think that's an appropriate comeback. And beyond that,
Because we're not like so extreme that you have to do this or you have to do that, or whatever.
yeah, right.
Well, the other thing too is that, and I think that again, you know, unfortunately, you know, people are like, this should have been done, this, you know, your code requires it. No, the code did not require it. And we haven't done anything wrong. It's not, I wouldn't disagree that it's better to have, you know, everything designated and have the forms and all of the information, but we are not unusual in across the country. There are plenty of places that probably have less than we do. So.
And how many do we see a year? I mean, again, it's not like we get hundreds. We may, and most of the ones we get are clearly either contributing or not contributing if they don't already have an inventory form, like both of these do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, so I think we'll hopefully be able to deal with that. I do want to tell you all that I got notification that we did get our CLG grant.
Oh, good.
So we will be able to do the survey plan, which will then set us up for more CLG and state historic fund money. So we may actually be able to get through some of this surveying, especially the reconnaissance. If we went for a state historic fund grant, we could get $100,000, have somebody come in and do a reconnaissance level of everything.
And it would be 100,000.
I think it would be at least 100,000.
Do you? Wow.
Wow.
You know, because we've got over 1,000 properties.
Yeah.
And they would want to look, because here's the thing. Once something's surveyed, doesn't necessarily mean that it stays static.
Yeah, that's true.
Things change.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully you have an ability in your office that as something comes in, you change the form, but that doesn't happen a lot of places. It's hard to keep up with that. And so you go back and you relook at things over time. And so I've had a discussion with the consultant that helped put together the grant and gave me a lot of the cost information and stuff. And he said they probably are just going to want to do the reconnaissance of everything, even the stuff that's already
surveyed.
Yeah. And just so that there aren't any gaps and it's kind of the same, you know, list and photos plus updated photos.
That would be expensive, yeah.
That would be.
So what's the grant for the plan?
25,000.
Okay.
And if I think there might have been a small element of starting the reconnaissance, but I can't remember now because we kind of went round and around whether we have enough money. No, I don't think I did, because doing the actual plan took up so much of what we were trying to hit, that 25,000,
Right.
that we were only going to have a few hundred or maybe a couple of thousand left to start doing reconnaissance, and it kind of wasn't worth getting 4 properties done or whatever they were going to do. So, but that'll get us, we'll get a plan in, it'll outline what the process is, it'll go out and do some evaluation, like, I think you should go ahead and plan on doing these properties, this area should be a national register, whatever. There'll be, you know, plan and recommendation, and then we'll have something to follow. They will also provide us cost estimate so they can break it out into phases that seem to make sense.
Oh, okay.
And then we can decide to go after each of those phases, or if bigger grant funds are available, you know, group some of them together. So it will be helpful. And it's kind of a step that, you know, people are like, well, why couldn't we just put that money toward surveying? Well, number one, it's not enough to do everything.
Right.
And you're going to have a harder time getting those other grant funds unless you have a plan.
So you hire a consultant to do the plan?
Yeah. And I have to look, I'm hoping at 25,000, we might be able to just single source and use the guy that was so helpful to do the grant application.
Right.
But if we have to go out to RFP, I know he'll put a proposal in, and frankly, the grant application is based on his proposal, so, you know, we'll see how it comes out, but,
Well,
I know
that's
he's
good
really,
news.
That's really.
yeah, I was very excited. I haven't written one for a while, and this was very like, oh, I've got a grant to do tomorrow, and I need all the questions answered. Well, let's see what kind of stuff I can throw together.
That's really
Wow.
good.
Good, that is good.
Yeah.
Really great job.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
We talked about it, now we'll actually have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I know.
it's, yeah, I mean, if nothing else, some of this, struggle with this code, the regulation changes, if it gets us moving on getting survey and inventory, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Alright.
Oh, I did wanna mention, so the 19th is our forum. I have arranged for it to be over at the Heritage Center. Depending on how many people are coming, Mike Mayo and maybe one other volunteer are gonna come over and they're gonna lead a tour kind of at the beginning of the actual center. We do some doe-sitting, where they go more in depth into some of the exhibits and stuff, and so they're arranged to do that. We'll need to get, some goodies and, drinks and some things to have for people during the time. I actually have a meeting that night back over here on short-term rentals, so I'm not gonna be able to go to happy hour with anybody. So hopefully one of you guys or somebody can, be there to lead the merry happy hour down the road and take them on. But
We
we'll
don't
see
know
how many
any
people. We don't meet yet.
Okay.
No, probably the beginning of that week.
Okay.
And then we'll see how many people indicated they want to do happy hour.
What time do you want us?
Well,
I
we
want that day
start.
like you will not believe.
I have myself scheduled starting at noon. That's about an hour before, for setup and stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, that would be good, because then we can, and I need to find out how they want us to set up. Do they want, tables? Do they, what do they want us to do? So, but we should be able to turn it pretty quick. I mean,
And I've got a board meeting at Pueblo that morning, so I
Okay.
probably can't be up here till almost 2
okay, you'll be here.
when they start.
Yeah, the training actually starts, so that's fine, yeah. So yeah, if a couple of people, but, Mike will be there and a couple of the people from the board, from the Heritage Center. So, I can, they'll help me.
Is there a meeting room there?
No, we just use the actual museum, we push the stuff aside and bring the chairs
I
in.
know I've had meetings there for Hiawatha.
Right.
And it was in
Same
the old
thing.
funky chairs that was
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love
the-
this.
Yeah, they were really cool.
Theater seats.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
amazingly comfortable.
and then there's all this stuff around, so.
Yeah,
That's
what we can do.
Creating atmosphere.
And my
Actually, one of
family
my
really likes,
favorites.
is it really good?
Oh,
Ah, good, that's great.
That is good.
Yeah, so I think it'll be good, hopefully everybody will have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
We can show off a little more.
Yeah. We can do that.
All right.
So if you haven't RSVP, do so.
Oh.
I have done so.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
Good.
I will.
It's good to hear.
All right, I have 7:40, which
I'm sorry.
shoots my
Sorry.
6:50 record. But I will call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Done a good job, Bobby. It's too bad you're stepping down to be an alternate.
I know, right?
Is this your last meeting?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you
now
gotta
they
go
need
in
a-
front of council.
they need- Dylan says they want to